Hello everyone, welcome to the third lecture of this series on number theory. So let's recap the first two lectures. So we looked at the definition of divisibility, which is for any two integers a and b, and a is not 0, then we can divide b by a, and b is divisible by a, or a divides b if there is another integer c such that b is a times c. This is the definition of divisibility. Then we looked at the definition of prime numbers. Prime numbers are numbers which have exactly two divisors, only two divisors. Then we also looked at some properties of divisibility, like a divides b, then a divides bc. So if a number is divisible by another number, then even if you multiply that number by another number, then it would be divisible. And if a divides b and b divides c, then a divides c. This a is dividing b, then b is dividing c, so a divides c. If a divides b and a divides c, then a divides their linear combination, bx plus cy. And if a divides b and b is non-zero, then the mod of a would be less than the mod of b. The absolute value of the divisor is less than the dividend. If a divides b and b divides a, if a number divides another number and that other number divides the first number, then these two numbers are equal in absolute value, then a is equal to plus minus b. And if m is not equal to 0, and a divides b if and only if m divides ab. So we can cancel out a number from a non-zero number from the two sides of the divisibility sign. So yeah, that's the recap. In this lecture we will study the division algorithm and the definition and properties of greatest common divisor. So this is very important lecture. Let's just begin now. So a division algorithm says that given any two integers a and b, and a is not equal to 0, then there exist unique integers q and r such that b is equal to aq plus r, 0 less than equal to r less than mod a, and if a does not divide b, then 0 is less than r less than mod a. So what is division algorithm all about? So in the previous two lectures we read what happens if a number exactly divides another number, and this may not be the case every time. Like one number could not divide another number, then also we have some properties. So what are those properties that are given by the division algorithm? So the division algorithm gives out the properties of the quotient and the remainder. So what this says is, if we divide one number by another number, this divisor should be not equal to 0, a not equal to 0, then we would get some quotient and some remainder, and this remainder will be greater than equal to 0. The remainder could be also be 0, and it's greater than equal to 0, and the remainder is less than the absolute value of a. So we are always taking the remainder to be positive, so the remainder would lie between 0 and the absolute value of a. And these quotient and remainders are unique. So if you divide two numbers by one number by another, this quotient and remainder would always be unique. If a divides b, if a does not divide b, then 0 less than r less than mod a means the remainder could not be 0, so it would be from 1 to mod a. The remainder could not be 0. If the remainder is 0, then a divides b would be true, because then b would be a times q plus 0, which is a times q. So then a would divide b. Now let's look at the proof of this property. So the proof is a bit difficult to understand on the first read, but please pay attention and try to understand. We will use this the setup of the proof in other proofs as well. So this is important to understand. consider set S equal to B minus AQ. Q belongs to Z and B minus AQ is greater than equal to 0. So what is this set S? So this set S is the set of all numbers in the form of B minus AQ. So we just want to collect all the remainders when we divide B by A. So we try to collect all the remainders in this set, and Q is in integer, so this is the quotient. We want the quotient to be an integer, and B minus AQ is greater than equal to 0. We want to consider the positive remainders. We don't want this R to be negative. And then what we claim is that the smallest possible in this set, the smallest possible number would be the remainder R that we want, and that is the remainder for the division. So for the smallest element to exist, first of all, we will use the minimum property, the infimum property. So the minimum would exist if the set is non-empty. So S is non-empty because B plus mod AB always belongs to S. Because B plus mod AB is of the form B minus AQ, where Q is plus minus of B, and this B plus mod AB is always greater than equal to 0 because mod AB is greater than B, so this number can't be negative. Therefore S is non-empty, therefore S has a minimum element. Let's call it R, and we'll show that this is the R that satisfies all these properties, this unique property. And so R is the minimum element, and we have all the elements in S greater than equal to 0, therefore R is also greater than equal to 0, and all the elements are of the form B minus AQ, therefore R is of the form B minus AQ for some Q is in integer, that is B equal to AQ plus R. So we have got R which is of the form B equal to AQ plus R, and 0 is less than equal to R. So next we want to say that R is less than mod A. So suppose on the contrary that R is greater than mod A, then what happens is that then we can set R dash equal to R minus mod A. Then R is greater than mod A, so R minus R dash, which is R minus mod A, which is R dash, is greater than equal to 0. And R dash equal to R minus mod A is equal to B minus AQ minus mod A. B minus AQ from this previous equation, and so this is B minus A times Q plus or minus 1 depending on the sign of A. So this is of the form B minus AQ. So this R dash also belongs to the set S. R dash is greater than 0, and R dash is of the form B minus A times another integer. This is an integer, so B minus A times another integer, so this number belongs to the set S. Now R dash is less than R, and R dash belongs to S. So this is a contradiction to the property that R is the minimum of. So this is a contradiction to the property that R is the minimum of S. Therefore A equal to BQ plus R, and therefore the contradiction arose because we assume that R is greater than mod A, therefore R should be less than mod A, and therefore B equal to AQ plus R, and 0 is less than R less than mod A. Now we also claimed that this quotient and remainder are unique. So let's try to prove the uniqueness part. So suppose there exist two sets of Q and R. One is Q1 R1, another is Q2 R2 in integers, such that B is equal to AQ1 plus R1 and AQ2, and which is also equal to AQ2 plus R2. Then we will try to prove. So we assume that there are two different set of quotient and remainder. So we will try to prove that this gives a contradiction, and then we can conclude that Q and R are unique. So since both are remainders, r1 and r2, therefore 0 is less than equal to r1 less than mod a, and similarly for r2. Then without loss of generality, means since there is no difference between r1 and r2, we can either assume r1 greater than r2, or we can either assume r2 greater than r1. The proof will remain the argument will remain the same. You can just change the subscript if you want to assume the other one and continue the proof. So without loss of generality, suppose r1 is greater than r2, then 0 is less than r1 minus r2 is less than mod a from these two equations. r1 minus r2 is greater than 0 from this equation and is less than mod a from these two parts. r1 is less than mod a and r2 is greater than equal to 0, so r1 minus r2 will be strictly less than mod a. And we are not assuming equality here because we assumed r1 r1 and q2 r2 to be unique. If we assume r1 equal to r2, then we will get q1 equal to q2, which is not what we assumed in the first place. So yeah, that's why we take strict inequality here. But r1 minus r2 is a times q2 minus q1 from this equation. So a divides r1 minus r2. A divides r1 minus r2, which means from this property 4, which is over here, from this property 4, if a divides b and b is not equal to 0, then mod a is less than mod b. So the dividend is, the absolute value of the dividend is greater than the absolute value of divisor. That is, mod a is less than mod of r1 minus r2, and r1 minus r2 is non-zero. That's why this property holds, property 4. So these two, if you look at these two equations, these two are just the opposite of each other, so which is a contradiction, which means q and r are unique. This contradiction arose because we assume that there are two sets of q1 and r1 and q2 r2 which are both quotient and remainder. So quotient and remainder are unique. All of you have definitely read this property earlier also, but not as in this form, but in some other form. The form that we read this property in is in the long division method. So in long division, what we do is we take a non-zero integer and we divide another integer by this. We divide another integer by this. So, and we get some quotient and we get a remainder, and we write dividend equal to divisor times quotient plus remainder. So this is the division algorithm, and this is what we do in the long division method. A is the divisor, B is the dividend, Q is the quotient, and R is the remainder. And we stop the division when we get R less than greater than equal to 0 and less than mod A. Earlier we would not have divided by negative number, but it seems general to divide by negative as well. We can only not divide by 0. And for negative, even if the divisor is negative, the remainder would always be positive or 0. So the remainder would always be greater than equal to 0. So keeping these things in mind, let's look at an example. So this is actually a very important and a useful property and comes handy in solving different problems. So the square of an integer gives remainder 0 or 1 when divided by 4. So from the division algorithm, we saw that any integer which is when divided by 4 would the possible set of remainders could be, so let's look at this equation first. So the remainder is always between 0 and mod a. So for a equal to 4, the possible set of remainders are 0, 1, 2 and 3, and r is less than mod 4, which is 4, so r is less than 4. So these are the 4 possible remainders. So this property is non-trivial. This says that the square of any integer, if an integer is the square of another integer, then it would give only remainder 0 and 1. 2 and 3 cannot be the remainder when an integer is divided by 4. So let's look at the proof of this property. So since we want the square of an integer and the remainder by 4, we start with an integer and look at the remainder by 2, and then we square the integer. So any number when divided by 2 would give remainder 0 or 1. The remainder has to be between 0 and 2, so 0 and 1 are the only possible remainders. And if the remainder is 0, then n equal to 2q, or if the remainder is 1, then n equal to 2q plus 1 would hold. These are the only two possibilities. If n equal to 2q, then 2 divides n, then n is an even number. If n equal to 2q plus 1, then n is an odd number. So now let's look at n square. So n square is 4q square. If n equal to 2q plus 1, then it's 4q square plus 4q plus 1, which is 4 times q plus 1 plus 1. So this is a number 4m plus 1. So if the n were an even number, then the remainder of n square with 4 is 0, because 4 divides n square. If n is an odd number, then the remainder of n square with 4 would be 1, because this is 4 times k plus 1, and this 1 is less than 4, therefore 1 is the remainder. So possible remainders of n square by 4 are 0 and 1. You can look at the first few examples of this property to understand this better. So 1 square, 2 square, 3 square, 4 square, and so on. So the remainders are, for 1 square we get 1, for 3 square we get 1, 5 square we get 1, 7 square 49, 1, so on. For even square we get the remainder as 0. So this is the property. This property has a very useful application, and let's look at this problem which will be solved using that property alone. So no integer in the sequence 11, 111, 1111, and so on, 5 ones and so on, is a perfect square. So this problem looks a bit difficult at first. Like how can we show that all these this infinite number of integers are not perfect square, none of them is perfect square? So if you just consider the previous property, that you look at the remainder by 4, then each of these would give a remainder which is not possible for a square, and then we can conclude that none of these numbers is a perfect square. So this problem you can try at your home. You can also look at another problem, which is look at what is the remainder when a square is divided by 3. So if a number is divided by 3, possible remainders are 0, 1, and 2, but 2 is not possible for a number which is perfect square. So any perfect square when divided by 3 would give remainder either 0 or 1. So this is also an important property, which is also quite useful in solving problems. Now let's look at the second topic of the lecture, which is greatest common divisor, or GCD. This is also known by highest common factor, or HCF. So greatest common divisor, so this is basically two words, greatest and common divisor. So common divisor is an integer which divides both integers a and b. So an integer d is called a common divisor of a and b if d divides a and d divides b. So let's say there are two integers 8 and 12, then 2 is a common divisor, 4 is a common divisor because 2 divides both 8 and 12. Similarly 4 divides both 8 and 12. So 2, 4 are the common divisors. 1 is also a common divisor. 1 divides 8 and 1 divides 12. So these are the common divisors. And GCD is a and b are two integers and which are not both 0, means not both a and b are 0. Then g greater than 0. GCD is always taken to be a positive integer, is said to be the GCD of A and B if and only if G divides A and G divides B, which means the GCD, greatest common divisor, is a common divisor. It divides both A and B. And if D divides A and D divides B, which means D is any other common divisor, then D divides G, which ensures that G is the greatest of all the common divisors, because any other common divisor would divide the GCD. So these are the two properties which for the GCD, and if an integer satisfies these two properties, it is the GCD. So the notation for GCD is GCD, we either write GCD in braces AB or just the braces AB. Examples of GCD are GCD of 4 and 8 is 4, because 4 divides 4 and 8 both, and 4 is the largest integer which divides these two. Similarly, the GCD of 10, 5 is 5, 10 and 4 is 2. An important property is if A divides B, then the GCD of A and B is A itself. 4 divides 8, so the GCD of 4 and 8 is 4 itself. GCD of 100 and 94 is 2. GCD of 78 and 9 is 3. GCD of 24 and 19 is 1. If P is a prime number, then the GCD of X and P is either 1 if P does not divide X, or P if P divides X. So since GCD is a common divisor, so GCD of X and P must divide P, and P is a prime number, which means its only two divisors possible are 1 and P itself. So these are the only two choices for GCD of X and P, and if P does not divide X, then P is not the possible GCD, because GCD divides both P. GCD should divide both P and X, and therefore 1 is the GCD. If P divides X, then P is the largest integer which divides both P and X, so P is the GCD. Now let's look at another quite important theorem and a few of its corollaries. This is the Bezout's theorem. So if A and B are integers and A and B are not both 0, then GCD of A and B exists, and there exist integers x0, y0 such that GCD of AB equal to AX0 plus BY0. So this basically gives you a way of writing GCD as a linear combination of the integer. GCD of A and B is equal to just A times x0 plus B times y0. This could and this also guarantees the existence of GCD, that GCD of A and B exists. Earlier we just defined the GCD in terms of some abstract properties, like GCD is a common divisor and GCD is the greatest, but we did not give any method to find this greatest common divisor. We could not even ensure that the greatest common divisor always exists. So this Bezout's theorem basically gives the existence proof that given any two integers not both 0, then the GCD would exist. A square plus B square not equal to 0 basically means A and B are not both 0. If A and B were both 0, then this number would be 0, and otherwise if one of them is non-zero, then this number would be positive. So this number would not be 0. So now let's look at the proof of this theorem. So again we look at a set, and we look at its minimum element, and the minimum element would be the GCD. So consider a set S which is AX plus BY, XY are integers, and AX plus BY is greater than 0. So this set is the linear combination of elements of A and B. The elements of this set are the linear combination of this A and B, and which are positive. So AX plus BY is greater than 0. So let's look at this set. So a square plus b square, setting x equal to a and y equal to b, then this a square plus b square is positive and is of this form. So this a square plus b square belongs to S. So the set S is non-empty. Then S, and S is great, all the elements are greater than 0, so S would have a minimum element, say G. Basically we want this, we'll prove that this minimum element is the GCD of A and B. So G equal to ax naught plus by naught. X naught, y naught belong to Z. X naught and y naught are integers because G is of the set S, so G is of this form, right? Yeah. Now take any common divisor D of A and B, that is D divides A and D divides B. Then D divides A x naught plus B y naught. D would divide any linear combination. Recall the properties of divisibility. Then D would divide G because G is equal to x naught plus B y naught. So any common divisor of A and B divides G. So G is the greatest of the common divisors, but we haven't yet proved that G is a common divisor. If we prove G is a common divisor of A and B, we would have shown that G is the GCD of AB. So let's try to show that G divides A. So we'll proceed by contradiction. Suppose G does not divide A, then G would leave a remainder when G divides A. So A equal to GQ plus R, such that 0 is less than R less than, this should be a strict inequality. If R is 0, then G would divide A, but we have assumed that G does not divide C. So A equal to GQ plus R, 0 less than R less than G. G is the divisor here, so R is less than G is the required inequality. And R equal to A minus GQ, just rearranging this, which is A minus, we replace the linear combination of G as the linear combination of A and B. So we get A minus AX naught plus BY naught times Q, which is A times 1 minus X naught Q plus B times minus Y naught, which is A times something plus B times something, which is and these two are integers. So this R also lies in this set S, and R is greater than or equal to 0 and R is less than G, which means R is strictly greater than 0 and R is less than G, which means R belongs to this set S and is less than G, which is a contradiction because we assume that G is the minimum of S. And if we assume that R is non-zero, then we get R as the minimum element. So this is a contradiction. The contradiction arose because we assume G does not divide A, which means G must divide A, and similarly G must divide B, which gives G is equal to the GCD of A and B, which completes the proof of existence as well as the linear combination. Existence because this set S exists and the minimum element of the set exists, and linear combination by the property of the construction of the set S. Now let's look at, so this is also a very important property. I will solve 2-3 problems using this property itself, and this also has a few corollaries which are also very useful. Let's look at the corollaries now. So corollary 1 is if A and B are co-prime, A and B are co-prime if, this symbol means if and only if, which means both sides of implication. This implies this and this implies this. So A and B are co-prime if and only if there exist x and y in integers such that ax plus by equal to 1, which means A and B are co-prime. Co-prime means GCD of A and B equal to 1. So GCD of A and B equal to 1 means ax plus by equal to 1, and ax plus by equal to 1 means GCD of AB equal to 1. So let's look at the proof of this corollary. So suppose A and B are coprime, which means GCD of A, B are 1. Then by theorem, since GCD could be written as a linear combination of integers, therefore there exists integer xy such that ax plus by equal to 1. Now suppose there exists xy. Now so this part of the proof is complete. Coprime implies this. Now we assume this and we try to reduce coprime property. So we assume, suppose x and y are integers such that ax plus by equal to 1. Then before proceeding, you can just try to understand that S was the set of all elements of the form ax plus by, and since there exists ax plus b and S, all the elements of S were greater than 0, so ax plus by equal to 1. So 1 should be the minimum element in S, because all the elements are greater than 0 and the next possible value is 1, and 1 is attained by some x and y, which means 1 is the minimum element, which shows that the GCD of A and B is 1. But let's look at the full proof. So suppose D is the GCD of AB, then G divides A and G divides B, which means G divides the linear combination ax plus by, which means G divides 1, which means G equal to plus minus 1. 1 plus minus 1 are the only divisors of 1, because any element C divides 1, which means mod of C is less than equal to 1, which means C equal to plus minus 1. So therefore C, only possible divisors of 1 are plus and minus 1. So G is equal to plus and minus 1, but G greater than 0 was assumed in the definition of GCD, which means G equal to 1. So why did we assume G greater than 0 in the definition of GCD? Because we want the GCD of two integers to be unique. If we did not assume positive, we could get minus the negative integer also as a common divisor, which is sort of greatest on the negative side. So 5 and 10, minus 10, the GCD could be defined 5 or minus 5 as well, but minus 5 is not chosen because this is negative and we want the GCD to be unique, so we define GCD to be positive only. One important conclusion from this is that GCD divides each element of the set S, because each element of set S is of the form ax plus by, that is a linear combination of A and B, and so G divides each of the elements of ax plus by. Now let's look at corollary 2. This is also useful. So if A and B are coprime, then n equal to ax plus by, xy integer. Then for any n integer, n equal to x plus by, xy belong to Z. So basically what we are saying is, if A and B are coprime, then any integer could be written as a linear combination of A and B. And the proof is simple. If A and B are coprime, means ax naught plus by naught equal to 1 by corollary 1. So which means n equal to A times n x naught plus b times n y naught. We multiplied this whole equation by n, which gives ax plus by, and x naught is x and y naught is y. So n equal to ax plus by. Corollary 3. If D equal to GCD of AB, then GCD of A by D and B by D equal to 1. You can relate this property to the way we find the HCF, or the highest common factor. So we take out all the common factors over there, and we are left with two numbers. So we stop the this prime factorization method for GCD when there are no common factor between these two numbers, right? So that is what we are saying. GCD of, if D is the GCD of A and B, and we divide A by D and B by D, then the GCD of these two numbers is 1. So let's look at the proof of this property. So since D divides A and D divides B, which means A by D and B by D are integers. So this is to show that the GCD exists, because we only define the GCD for integers and not for fractions or anything. So A by D and B by D are integers, so the GCD exists. And D equal to AX0 plus BY0 by the theorem, where x0, y0 are integers. So divide the whole equation by D, the both sides by D. Then we get 1 equal to A by D x0 plus B by D y0. So by corollary 1, GCD of A by D and B by D would be equal to 1, which completes the proof. So now we'll look at 3 examples and we'll conclude this lecture. So let's look at the first example. Suppose the GCD of A and B n are 1, the GCD of B and n are 1, then the GCD of AB and n are 1. So you can understand this property using the prime factorization also. So A and n have no common prime factors, B and n have no common prime factors, then this product AB and n would also have no common prime factors. So let's look at the proof. The proof would use theorem 1, the theorem and corollary 1, corollary 2, etc. So A and n are 1, the GCD is 1. So by theorem 1 equal to AX1 plus NY1, and Bn are GCD is 1. So 1 equal to Bx2 plus NY2. X1, Y1 belong to Z, and X2, Y2 also belongs to Z. Right. So Ax1 equal to 1 minus NY1, just rearranging this equation, and Bx2 equal to 1 minus NY2, rearranging this equation. We did this rearranging because we want to generate A and B. So we are going to multiply these two equations now. You could also multiply over here 1 and this, but that would lead to some problems. So we won't get AB in the desired form, because we'll get cross terms also, A times n and B times n. But yeah, let's look at the proof. So AB is x1 x2 equal to 1 minus n times y1 plus y2 minus y1 y2, which is 1 equal to AB times, so rearranging this, 1 equal to AB x1 x2 plus n times y1 plus y2 minus y. So AB times x plus n times y, which gives GCD of AB and n equal to 1. If you're just thinking about it, let's try if we just multiply these two equations, I think we will also get the result. So if we multiply these two equations, 1 equal to AB x1 x2 plus n times AX1 y2 plus bx2 y1 plus y1 y2 and y1 y2. So yeah, in this form also, if we multiply these two equations, so basically we just have to write the GCD of AB equal to AN equal to 1, the property of linear combination, and if we multiply the two equations, we get this form: AB times an integer plus n times another integer is 1. So GCD of AB and n is 1. So you just saw how useful this property is. The GCD of two numbers is 1, and B and n is 1, then the product and n is 1. This is a useful property. And let's look at another property. This is also very useful. In fact, we'll use this in multiple problems and in the next problem also that we solve. So let's look at this property. If A divides n and B divides n and GCD of A and B is 1, then AB divides n. The product AB divides n. So this is not true in general. If GCD of A and B is not 1, then this property may not hold. So an example of that is, say 4 divides 8 and 4 divides 8 again. So we set A equal to 4, B equal to 4, n equal to 8, n equal to 8. Then AB equal to 16 and AB does not divide 8, right? 16 does not divide 8. This is one example. Another example could be, over here we take A equal to B, and so we got this property. This is also interesting because if A divides n, this does not mean A square would also divide n, which is what we are trying to say here. Another possible example could be 2 times 3 divides 12 and 4 divides 12, right? Yes, so 6 divides 12 and 4 divides 12, but their product 6 times 4 equal to 24. This does not divide 12, right? So the product can become larger also, and this doesn't mean that it would divide. The product would divide the number. Yeah, because over there the GCD of 4 and 4 was 4. Over here the GCD of 6 and 4 is 2 and not 1. Now let's look at the proof. So A divides n and B divides n, which means A equal to n times n equal to A times Q and n equal to B times P, where P and Q are integers, and GCD of A and B equal to 1 is given. So using the theorem, A x naught plus B y naught equal to 1, x naught y naught are integers. Now using the corollary 2, that n equal to n A x naught plus n B y naught, or basically by multiplying this equation by n, we get n equal to n A x naught plus n B y naught, which is, now we want to prove that AB divides n. So what we do is we write this n as B times P and this n as A times Q, so that we would get AB term over here and AB term over here, and we'll take this common. So writing n as BP and n as AQ, we get AB terms, and we take this AB as common, and so AB times P x naught plus Q y naught equal to n, which means AB divides n. So this completes the proof, and this is very useful property. We will use this in the next proof. Prove that the product of 3 consecutive integers is divisible by 6. This is also a useful property, and we should keep this in mind for other problems also. The product of in fact the product of any n consecutive integers is divisible by n square, n factorial. You can try to prove this property on your own. Right now we will only look for an example of this property, which is for n equal to 3. So we need to prove divisibility by 6. So we divide 6 into 2 factors which are co-prime. So 6 equal to 2 times 3, and 2 and 3 are co-prime. And let's suppose our integer is n. So we want to show that the product of 3 consecutive integers, which means n plus 1, n plus 2, product is P, is divisible by 6. So we'll show divisibility by 2, we'll show divisibility by 3, and we'll conclude using the previous above property that this is divisible by 6. So by division algorithm, n equal to 2q or n equal to 2q plus 1. That is, the possible remainder by 2 are 0 and 1 only. So remainder for when we divide by 2 are 0 and 1 are the only possible values. So if n equal to 2q, the remainder is 0, then p equal to, we substitute n as 2q, so 2q times n plus 1, n plus 2, which clearly shows that 2 divides p. And if n equal to 2q plus 1, then we substitute n plus 1 as 2q plus 1 plus 1, which gives a common factor 2 out. So in this case 2 divides p. So in both cases 2 divided p, which means 2 divides p always. 2 always divides p. Similarly, by division algorithm, possible remainders for n when divided by 3 are 0, 1 and 2. So n equal to 3k plus 1 or 3k plus 2 are the possible forms of n. And if n equal to 3k, then 3 divides n, 3 divides p, because this is from this is using the first property of divisibility. If 3 divides n, then 3 would divide n times some other numbers, so 3 would divide the whole product p. And if n equal to 3k plus 1, then 3 would divide n plus 2, 3k plus 1 plus 2, which is 3k plus 3, so 3 divides that number, so 3 divides p. So on n equal to 3k plus 2, then 3 divides n plus 1, 3 divides, and therefore 3 divides p. So 3 divides p in all the 3 cases, so 3 always divides p. So 2 divides p and 3 divides p. By the previous property, 6 divides p. So we have proved that the product of 3 consecutive integers is divisible by 6, which is a very useful property. So this ends the lecture. Thank you everyone.